السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على حضرة سيدنا مولانا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم افتح علينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا أكرم الأكرمين. أما بعد، so alhamdulillah, welcome to this webinar on preparation for the blessed and holy month of Ramadan, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullah ta'ala khairan for your attendance, and I hope, inshallah ta'ala, I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make this the time that we spend together, inshallah ta'ala, that it will be accepted by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be beneficial for us, inshallah ta'ala, in this world and the hereafter. Allahumma ameen. So let me let us begin by speaking about Ramadan in general, before we get into the practical tips. But let's speak about the holy month of Ramadan, the blessed month of Ramadan, from a general perspective, and the importance of preparation for Ramadan. So the month of Ramadan is like a spiritual camp for Muslims. Perhaps some of you are aware of the different levels of fasting. I assume that some of you heard of the fasting of the physical self, which is to fast from eating and drinking and the sexual intimacy. And then there is a higher level of fasting, which is that the other limbs, other body parts, fast from any wrongdoings, any shortcomings. So it would be a fasting from backbiting, a fasting from slander, a fasting from looking at what is haram. So this type of fasting is the fasting of the gaze. So one would lower their gaze. Is a fasting of a tongue. So one would not use their tongue in expressions or phrases or statements that are haram or that are harmful to others. Like from lying, envy, and so on and so forth. But then there is also fasting one level that would be included with what we have been talking about in terms of the fasting of the tongue and the fasting of the eyes and so on and so forth. They would also say fasting of the tongue from envy, fasting of the heart from envy, fasting of the heart from arrogance, fasting of the heart to fast from conceit, envy, bad will in people, a sense of greed, because greed comes from the heart. So to fast from these wrongdoings of the spiritual heart. So this would also be the second level. And then the third level is to fast from being concerned with anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the highest level. to fast from being busy and concerned with anything other than Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that this is a third level of fasting. Most people, or astaghfirullah, many people, I shouldn't say most, astaghfirullah, many people, before they get into Ramadan, they don't get into Ramadan with an objective, with a purpose. So they fast with everyone, which is alhamdulillah. It's a very important ibadah in Islam. Right? But they don't get into Ramadan with an objective, with a purpose. The reason I just, touched upon this 3 levels of fasting to help myself before anyone else, and to share with you examples of objectives to work on as we enter Ramadan. The first level is something that you ought to do, otherwise your fasting is nullified, is invalid. So we don't really have a choice with this one. Fasting from food and drinking and sexual intimacy. This is something that we ought to do for us to fast, right? For fasting to, at the surface level, to be counted. So this is something that we know we have to do, right? Or we could say we already developed as Muslims from a young age the ability to do it. Our parents had us fast when we were about, before we get into our teenage years, by a few or a couple of years and so on and so forth. We got into the habit of, when the month of Ramadan comes, we fast. From Fajr, a little bit before Fajr, and until sunset, we hold from drinking, eating, and sexual relationship. Okay. But we have to work on ourselves in terms of moving beyond this level. Ramadan, as I was saying, at the month of Ramadan, as I was saying earlier, is a spiritual camp for Muslims. We're talking about recharging, right? Ramadan, we want to recharge for Ramadan. And Ramadan in itself is a spiritual recharge for the whole year. It comes as we fast in Ramadan, in the month of Ramadan, it's a whole month. So it's like a spiritual boot camp for Muslims. So when we focus only at the surface level, which perhaps we learned as little children, we fast from eating, drinking, and so on and so forth. When we focus on that only, and then we get busy with the different routines of Ramadan, whether social or even ritual, in terms of Taraweeh, in terms of recitation of the Quran, but we lose purpose. We lose a sense of direction. What do I want to achieve during this Ramadan? What is it that I want to work on during the month of Ramadan? The month of Ramadan is an opportunity for us to realize the deficiencies. It's a free diagnosis. The deficiencies that we have, the spiritual deficiencies that come from our lower selves, from our egos. How is that? Well, we know from the Prophet ﷺ that during the month of Ramadan, ash-shayateen, they are entrapped, they're confined. The devils are confined. Yes, scholars have different interpretations in terms of, whether all the devils or most of them or some of them. But the point here is that devils receive a form of confinement. How is that related to diagnosis? Well, because then the ma'asi that we, wal-'iyadhu billah, we feel tempted, the sins that we feel tempted to do in the month of Ramadan, we can then catch our egos, our lower selves, as they are committing the crime. It's not the devil, it's the ego. It's not the devil, it's the lower self. We know already from the scholars of spirituality that the thoughts that come from, or the thought waves, al-khawatir, the thought waves that come from the lower self, they pertain to two things: desire, and they pertain to desires, and they are repeated. The waswasa, the whispers of the shaitan, the shaitan is not persistent in the sense of a particular sin to do. The shaitan tries to get us fall into any sin possible, any sin. So he will try different ways, different sins. The general purpose of the shaitan is that we fall into sins. Which ones? He doesn't care. But the nafs al-ammara bis-su, the lower self, the ego, it's persistent. There is a certain desire that it wants, and it will keep nagging about it. It will keep demanding it from you over and over and over and over. So, al-khawatir, the thought waves that come from the nafs, they are repeated over and over, and they pertain particularly to desires, whether physical desires or desires that relate to privilege and status and fame, or desires that related to the material world in terms of wealth and money. But the nafs is persistent, and nafs al-ammara, the lower self, is persistent, and it demands the same thing over and over, or same things, but over and over. So during the month of Ramadan, you would be able to find out about the challenges that come from your lower self, the challenges that come from your ego. Now, smart believers, they won't wait for Ramadan, for the month of Ramadan. They will already start doing the antivirus scan. They will run the scan before they get into Ramadan. And they will figure out what problems they are having. So that during the month of Ramadan, they work on it. They are present before the month of Ramadan. They're spiritually present. And when one is spiritually present and develops a spiritual awareness, and they have a sense of spiritual introspection, they realize they realize the problems that come from the lower self. They would say, oh, I have a problem with arrogance. I have a problem with gratefulness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I need to be more thankful for the blessings of Allah. I have a problem with sabr, with patience. I'm not patient in the face of calamities, in the face of trials. I need to be more reliant upon Allah. Or I have a problem, I have heart diseases, spiritual diseases, like envy. I compare. I have a spiritual problem that is related to conceit. I have a spiritual problem that is related to husn al-dhann bin-nas, goodwill in people. So they will pinpoint the disease or diseases that they have before they get into Ramadan. Spiritual diseases. Just like a sports player getting into a boot camp. If they have a good coach, and you are your coach in this regard, but if they have a good coach, the coach will say, okay, this player, during this boot camp, they need to develop so-and-so. They need to develop their acceleration in terms of running when they are in short distances to get the ball before their opponent, or they need to work on their passing. They need to work on their shooting. They need to work on their defensive skills. So they get into the boot camp with a sense of direction, a sense of purpose, an objective. I believe this is clear now. The question would be, all right, how do we do that? Okay, we did this diagnosis. We have a form of we have some idea of the of problems or spiritual challenges that we need to overcome. How do we actually overcome it during the month of Ramadan? Okay, so we know from the Prophet ﷺ that as-sa'im, the one who fasts, lahu da'watun la turad, there's the sa'im, when he's breaking or she's breaking their fast, and they make a dua, they have a dua that is never rejected. The dua of the one who is fasting as they break their fast is not rejected, is accepted. One of my teachers, Hafidhahullah, shared with us one day a habit of his. He says, every Ramadan, he says, before I get into Ramadan, I choose something or some things, they're particular. And I make dua as I break my fast for these things every day. He doesn't change them. So from day 1 to day 29 or day 30, every time he breaks his fast, he makes this dua. Which dua? You decide. You decide. Something you're going to make a dua about. But be persistent and consistent. So don't change it. Be persistent, meaning make sure that you make the dua every day. If you're breaking your fast at work, make the dua. If you're breaking your fast with family, make the dua. If you're breaking your fast over relative's house, make the dua. No matter where you're going to break your fast or with whom, make sure to take the time to make the dua. So be persistent and be consistent in the sense that same thing every day in Ramadan. Same thing every day in Ramadan. طيب, What if it's a worldly matter? Marriage, buying a house, having a better job. No problem. You can make that dua as well. And also be consistent. But don't make it all about worldly life. It is fine to ask for blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no problem. And be consistent in that as well, no problem. But make sure that there is a dua related to the problems or challenges or diseases of the spiritual heart that you are seeking cure, that you're seeking healing from, and you're seeking help and support from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to heal from and to receive cure from them during the month of Ramadan. So he said, number one, go into Ramadan with a sense of purpose and direction in regards to spiritual challenges that you have. This should be translated every day in your breaking, when you break your fast, to make dua. Even if it's something like a trauma, even if it's something like an enemy, make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would guide them and that Allah would help you overcome your trauma. Unless reviving the person's name or event or context in your mind would cause you some sort of a psychological distress or an anxiety, then you don't have to do it this way. You can just ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant you psychological strength and agility, and to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for calmness of the soul and serenity of the self, without getting into details so you don't revive an anxiety in yourself. Depends. Some people, they are already over the difficult part of the trauma, but they still suffer from residuals inside of them. They sometimes feel captivated. They sometimes feel they want to take revenge. And they want to overcome that. This is something different. But if a trauma is still fresh in mind, and if one revives it's like, because also traumas are like wounds. Sometimes you just need to cover it, let it heal a bit before applying any medication. But you just cover it, you let it, just like with wounds on the skin, you just wait for the blood develop some form of a crust or something before removing the cover and applying any other sort of medication. So it's like that sometimes with traumas. But the point here is, use the dua, the daily dua during Maghrib as you break your fast. You can ask for your wishes in this world, la ba's, but be akhirah oriented. إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم. The one who, the Quran, إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم, except the one who come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a healthy heart, spiritual heart. Salim comes from the word salama. Salama means to be free from any dangers, problems, diseases. So we ought to come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with hearts that are free from that. So one, have a sense of purpose and direction in the month of Ramadan. Two, this should be translated in your daily dua that you're going to do, inshallah ta'ala, as you break your fast. Can I do other times other than breaking the fast? Sure, why not? Before Fajr, as you are waiting after you eat your sahur, and we're supposed to leave and to finish off our sahur, finish off eating our sahur but before Fajr by about 15-20 minutes. Not an obligation, but highly recommended. And the closer you get to Fajr, the more you are supposed to do what is known as imsak. Why? Because you shouldn't wait until the very last minute. Because if you wait until the very last minute, you could get into a problematic case where you eat after the after Fajr time begins. So you don't want to fall into that. Usually you find in fasting or in the calendars of the month of Ramadan, they usually add a slot in which they define waqtul imsak, the time for holding off from food and drinking and so on. And that is prior to the time of Fajr by about 15-20 minutes. So after you finish your sahur, you have about 15 minutes before Fajr. This is also a time of accepted prayer. So you begin your day with this dua, and you end your day during the time of breaking your fast with the same dua as well. So after today's webinar, inshallah, till the beginning of Ramadan, in your planner, in your notebook, whatever it may be, on your phone, start brainstorming so that by the time of Ramadan, you define which du'as you're going to make. And don't make a long list. Don't make it like 10. No. 2-3 du'as that you're going to stick to, and you're going to keep making these du'as throughout the month of Ramadan in the times that I just mentioned. Okay. If you make it a list of 10 things, you're going to round up not being persistent. You're going to do 2, 3, 4 days, and then you're going to say, oh, this is too long, I'm not going to finish it. So don't fall into that. Be realistic. Be realistic. Sometimes you'll be in context where you need to break your fast quickly, and then you pray Maghrib, and then you return again. So if maybe people will be waiting for you so that you're going to pray with them, you're going to eat with them. So you don't want to keep holding them and say, no, I have a long list. And you turn, you get out your A4, folded A4 paper. Look, I have to read all these. No. 1, 2, 3 things that you ask for, and you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for every day. That's it. Don't make it more than that. So you can be persistent and consistent with them. Okay? طيب. Number 3, The month of Ramadan is an opportunity to kickstart certain spiritual habits, whether it be Qiyamul Layl, and this is achieved through Taraweeh, or whether it be having a daily wird of Quran. Before the month of Ramadan, meaning from today till the month of Ramadan, it's good to start initiating some of these habits. So for example, with Qiyam al-Layl, you could start with praying witr. If you don't pray witr, begin by praying witr. If you already pray witr, then add 2 rak'ahs with the witr. If you already do 2 rak'ahs of sunnah, for example, after Isha, make it 4 with the witr. My point here is include a small increment of Qiyam al-Layl in your daily routine before you get into Ramadan. Same thing with the Quran. You don't have to do a full chapter per day, but get into the habit from today, get into the habit of reading the Quran daily, looking into the Quran. If you already memorized, MashaAllah, Barakallahu ta'ala feek, or fiki, but don't deprive your eyes from gazing at the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the written form. So make sure that you have a daily recitation of the Quran. It could be a page per day, no problem. It could be 2 pages. La ba's. The whole point is to kickstart the habit of daily recitation. And if 1 page you think it's too little, no problem. But if you haven't been doing it, then I would suggest just begin with a page or 2 pages, which is like rubu hizb, a quarter of a hizb. That's it. Yes, Shaykh, but I aspire to do more. But it's okay, just wait. This is the weight you can carry now. This is the weight that you can lift. Begin with that. Rubu hizb. But if I do this, I don't know when I will finish. Don't worry about the finishing. Have a growth mindset. Be focused at the moment that you're doing this habit, or we're working on developing this habit daily. If you busy yourself, if you're not reading the Quran daily now, and you want to go from 0 to a full chapter per day, don't do that. Wait. Alhamdulillah, during the month of Ramadan, people empower each other. Then you can increase during the month of Ramadan. But what I would recommend for you to do before Ramadan, get into the habit of opening the Quran daily. So that on the first day of Ramadan, you don't feel that you're doing something new altogether. See? But get the ball rolling, in a sense. Get the ball rolling in terms of recitation of the Quran. Get the ball rolling in terms of Qiyam al-Layl. So this is the third advice. Get the ball rolling in terms of Qiyam al-Layl, in terms of recitation of the Quran. And what is the third thing we ought to do in Ramadan? Sadaqah. The Prophet ﷺ, as the companions or Sayyidah Aisha used to describe him, they say, the Prophet ﷺ during the month of Ramadan, كَانَ كَالرِّيحِ الْمُرْسَلَةِ. He was like, in terms of charity, in general, not just Ramadan. Excuse me, just 1 second. The Prophet ﷺ was, in terms of charity, كَانَ كَالرِّيحِ الْمُرْسَلَةِ, like a blowing wind, in giving out, helping and supporting people. And then they said, وَكَانَ أَجْوَدْ مَا يَكُونْ فِي رَمَضَانِ. And the peak of his giving, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in charity would be during the month of Ramadan. So develop a habit of giving out, helping people with sadaqah. And be balanced. Be balanced. So don't go extreme. As we said with the recitation of the Quran and the Qiyam al-Layl, also do same thing with the sadaqah. Do the amount that you can do daily, weekly, monthly, but do the amount that is easy for you to have a habit of doing. Yes, but this is so little, no problem. But let's get the ball. Remember, this advice is titled, get the ball rolling. So don't begin with an amount that forms a challenge. Yes, but we are supposed to, we're supposed to give from what we love. Okay, are you already giving? Not really. Then give the amount that you don't feel is difficult for you to do. Even if you deem it little. أحب الأعمال إلى الله, as the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith that is authentically narrated. أحب الأعمال إلى الله, the most beloved actions to Allah. أدومه, the consistent. وَإِنْ قَلْ, even if it's little. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves consistency. Loves consistency. So be consistent. What is the amount that you can be consistent with, be consistent in terms of giving out? Whatever that amount is, that's the amount that you stick to. Even if it's little. Maybe during the month of, okay, so you start this from now, and then during the month of Ramadan, just add a little bit to it. And if possible that you do that daily, that'll be perfect. If it's possible that you do a daily sadaqah, that's awesome. If you're gonna do it, in monetary, then do it in a form of food. Cook an extra meal. Not meals, just cook an extra meal. If you are a family of 4, just during the month, consider that you are a family of 5. If you are a family of 5, consider that you are a family of 6. If you are a family of 3, consider that you are a family of 4. And do an extra meal. And give that meal out every day. See? The whole point is, as I said, get the ball rolling. From now, three three aspects you need to kickstart. But do like you know how with businesses, sometimes they do something called soft opening. So I do a soft start for Ramadan. Some daily recitation of the Quran, some daily qiyam layl, some daily sadaqah. If you begin this from now, before the month of Ramadan, don't burn yourself before Ramadan. So again, just soft start. That helps you develop in Ramadan more in a steady way. Helps you develop in Ramadan in a steady way. And what I say about what I warn about in terms of burnout now, I also warn about that at the beginning of Ramadan. People tend to burn out after a few days in Ramadan. Why? They burden themselves with rituals and recommended actions more than what they can do. So you don't want to do that. And this period is why another benefit to do a soft start of Ramadan now, to test yourself. What weight can I actually carry? So you can work on that during Ramadan in a very gradual, paced way. So this is the third advice. Get the ball rolling. In terms of sadaqah, recitation of the Quran, qiyam layl. And also, you can add to that praying in congregation. Praying in the mosque. If you already pray all of your prayers or most of them in congregation, then okay. How about praying one of the prayers, the daily prayers, at the mosque? Right? So you start including that. Should I do the 5? Do 1. Begin with 1. Develop the habit, then make it 2. Develop the habit, make it 3. وهكذا. طيب. Number 4, it has to do with nutrition. Maybe some of you weren't expecting that, but the 4th advice has to do with nutrition. What you eat during the breakfast and what you eat in as a fatur and what you eat as a sahur is affects your spirituality, believe it or not, and affects your physicality as well, and you need to be physically in shape in order to do taraweeh and and recitation of the Quran and so on and so forth. Right. Imam al-Ghazali radiallahu ta'ala anhu says something of absolute importance. And there is a dua here, apologies, there's There is a question here on it says, I have a question about a sleepy head after Fajr. Can you please give us any tips and tricks for us to be more powerful and focused with a sluggish body in Ramadan? So, and I was just speaking about nutrition. Imam al-Ghazali radiallahu ta'ala anhu says, Ramadan, you're not supposed to have more than 2 meals. Some people say, okay, well, so what's new? Well, Imam Ghazali says, look, if you eat the same amount that you eat outside of Ramadan and you eat it in Ramadan, but instead of at 3 meals, you make those at 2 times, you're still eating 3 meals. Again, so if you're outside of Ramadan, you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. طيب. So if you come in Ramadan and you eat the same amount of a breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but sahur, in suhoor and futur, then you're not doing it the right way. He said in Ramadan, you have to reduce a meal, not to divide it between 2 meals. So you round up eating the same amount. So this is something that people don't realize. They eat the same amounts, but over 2 meals instead of over 3. So Imam Ghazali says, if you do that, you're not doing it correctly. Some Muslim localities and some Muslim cultures, what they do also is that they divide the breakfast in Ramadan over 2 small meals. But make sure if you're going to do that, to make it small. Otherwise, it's going to round up. So they would have a small portion. After they would break their fast through dates or something like that. They would pray Maghrib and then they would come to eat something just to give them some energy so that they can pray Taraweeh. And then after Taraweeh, they have another, something else small. And then they wait for until the time of sahur, and then time of suhoor, and then in their sahur they would have the second meal. But the point here is not to be eating the portions of 3 meals over 2. It's very important that your meals would include natural sugars. And this is why in many Muslim cultures, during the month of Ramadan, you find people, even mosques, they raise funds to buy dates. In the Egyptian culture, and this is something I remember until this very day, some families do it, but I remember, my grandmas, rahimahumullah, this is something that they would do every day in Ramadan. They would get dried dates. That was part of the supplies for the month of Ramadan. They would get dried dates, and every day they would have like a jug, and they would put dried dates in it, and there's a certain proportion that, and then obviously they would break it into pieces. They would break it into pieces, take out the seed. You break it into pieces, right? And then you pour milk over it, and then they leave it sit in the fridge, for example, sit from the morning till the time of breaking the fast. And then they would break their fast over this milk with dates. A nice cup of milk with dates wouldn't require, it gives you enough energy, and it wouldn't require to have a big dish after that. So, and sometimes they would have it during the sahur as well. During the suhoor, they would have it for sahur. To have these milk with it, and milk is even though it's a drink, but it is because of its nutrition and its effect on the body, it's considered as food, not as a drink. So milk with dates is very important in Ramadan. Some people, when they eat heavy meals during suhoor, especially if it has things like garlic or onions and so on and so forth, these would cause sleepiness. And obviously it's not recommended because it will get you thirsty very early during the day. During suhoor, if you eat something that is rich in natural sugars with some form of a plant protein, and then have a yogurt or something, and that is that will be a good you could say recipe in terms of the what you need in terms of nutrition, and also what can help you be energetic the next day. If you get a chance to do a nap between before Asr, and this is something that you ought to do, because because one of the reasons why people feel sleepy and sluggish after the next day is that they stay up until Fajr, and then they sleep after Fajr. But throughout the night, they don't sleep whatsoever. So observing a good, healthy routine in terms of what you eat during Ramadan, be very, very mindful about what you eat. The gut is empty throughout the day. So what you pour into it will have a huge impact on your mood, your energy, your physical ability, your brain functions, your spirituality. If you break your fast in a way and you walk from the dinner table feeling so full, this is not only, it's not only a problem physically, it's also a problem spiritually. This is why Imam Qustulani used to say that the first bid'ah in Islam, was filling up with food until one feels filled up. That's the first bid'ah. Because the Prophet ﷺ and the companions, number one, they didn't eat until they became hungry. And when they eat, they don't eat until they feel full. So fullness was considered to be a bid'ah. So it's the month of fasting. So when we walk away from the dinner table feeling full, that's it speaks about a spiritual problem, a sign of a spiritual problem. So being mindful about what you eat during the month of Ramadan, and in terms of quantity and in terms of quality, and making sure that you get the nap between Dhuhr and Asr, if possible. If it's not possible, then after Taraweeh, or the number of rak'ahs that you pray, make sure that you don't get busy with television or Netflix or things like that, or chatting, or be very religious in your routine, so that you can go to sleep a few hours and then wake for suhoor and so on and so forth. Pray Fajr, do some recitation of dua of Quran and so on and so forth. Have then go to sleep for a couple of hours, and then you wake up for work and so on. So you have, at the end of the day, you have a 7-8 hours. Yes, they're not straight, but you have a 7-8 hours of sleep that are divided throughout the day. Yeah. So I hope that is useful, inshallah ta'ala. Let me turn now to the questions. Sister Anisa, wa alaikum salam. She said, I've been through divorce 11 years ago. My final talaq was given to me in Ramadan. The trauma led to anxiety, fears, and phobias. After treatment, I have recovered to a certain level, alhamdulillah. However, the wound still pierces through my heart. I try to make dua during Ramadan before the time of Maghrib, which is a perfect time when du'as are accepted. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for you and allow you to overcome this trauma and to observe the wisdom behind it, because there is a wisdom. Anything that takes place in this dunya happens for a reason. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant you the insight to see the wisdom of it, and to also see and realize the the subtle mercy and grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this calamity. Sayyid ibn Ata'illah al-Sakandari radiyallahu ta'ala anhu said, من ظن انفكاك لطفه عن قدره فذلك لقصور نظره. Whoever believes or whoever thinks or assumes that the subtle grace and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is detached from what He had predestined upon His creation, that is of short-sightedness. So there is a subtle mercy and grace in what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala predestined and ordained for us. It's just about having the insight, the clear vision to realize and see and witness these subtle blessings and mercy and grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to expand your insight to witness these. And to witness the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala behind this challenge and trial that you went through and going through. And alhamdulillah, I'm very glad that you already had this habit of making dua at the time of Maghrib. Perhaps also include that, add to your routine the dua before Fajr, before the call of prayer or the call to prayer of Fajr, after you have your suhoor, the dua that you make during the time of iftar, do that dua as well during the time of suhoor. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you always. Allahumma ameen. Sister Nur Azza, she says, Assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam. What happens if a member, I knew this question will come up. What happens if a member of a family invites us for iftar and tarawih together, but there's usually a lot of food during that family Ramadan event? Can we decline such invitation? No, you don't have to decline the invitation, but you have to very strict internally. Note, don't make it like a fight with a person. At the end of the day, they have good intention, right? Maybe they don't do it correctly, but they have good intention. So don't break their heart. But be very strict about what you eat internally. All right? So it's always okay. People will understand if you say, look, I feel very heavy and it causes me, you can even bring it from the perspective of the physical health. You say, look, last Ramadan, when I eat, when I fill up during breakfast, I wasn't feeling well. So just let me, I'll put in my plate what I want. Thank you so much. And always have this smile. Thank you so much for, this is a lot, mashallah. This is great food. You've been so gracious, so generous with us. Jazakumullah ta'ala khair. Barakallah ta'ala feekum. Make dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would bless them and would shower them with blessings and so on and so forth. Tell them, look, I'll just, I'll serve the portions that I, that I would feel is good for, good for my health. And don't worry, if I want more, I will, without I ask, I'll put some more. And if you tell them something like that, they will, they will be okay about it. Especially if you tell them that, don't worry, if I need more, I will not ask you. I'll just put for myself. They want to make sure that you're not, you're not shy from, having of their food, right? So they want to make sure that, they are hospitable with you. So when you tell them that, they feel comfortable, right? And then they give you your space, right? But you have to be assertive but kind, right? Some people shy from speaking up, so people keep serving them, and then they feel obliged to eat and finish their plates and so on and so forth. No, you have to be assertive. But as you're assertive, you be kind, right? In the words that you choose and how you say it and the postures and gestures that you make, then, they're comfortable with that. Right? Even if it goes to the point where tell them, look, I'm just trying this month, this year around, I'm trying to, observe this kind of routine in terms of what I eat. But look, you can wrap up my portion. I'll eat it afterwards. See, I'll just have this for now. And look, this plate, you can wrap it up for me. Jazakumullah ta'ala khair. You can take the food, either that you eat it some other time or give it in charity, whatever it is. But this way, you don't upset them. And at the same time, you don't upset your routine. See? So it's just these are some social skills that we need to develop to go around these these events. But it's not problematic. Go, but be strict internally about your routine, and don't break their heart in terms of don't decline their invitation. Right? So I believe this is the way that you ought to go about. Like, what if? Okay, so this is if they do tarawih. I know you're not. I'll add something. I know you didn't ask about, but maybe other people might be wondering about. Okay, so some other families, they don't do tarawih. They just do iftar, and then they round up chatting or watching television or this or that. Should we decline? No, don't decline. You can attend for for breaking the fast and so on and so forth, and then excuse yourself because tarawih and so on, and they wouldn't be surprised because this is something that some people do in Ramadan. So excuse yourself in a nice way, this and that, jazakumullah ta'ala khair, and make dua for them. وهكذا. If it's possible, take a gift for them with you as you go, show appreciation for the invitation, that type of thing. So it's all about, being assertive and kind, instead of escaping the circumstances altogether. No, wallahu a'lam. Wait, what else? Perhaps we can take one more question. And inshallah ta'ala, coming up in Ramadan, with Muslims Connected, we're gonna be having a course on the 4 pillars of spiritual transformation, inshallah ta'ala, on Sundays in Ramadan, around this time as well, at the time of this webinar. It's gonna be this course is based on a book by Sayyidi Muhyiddin al-Arabi radiyallahu ta'ala anhu called Hilyatul Abdal, or the literal translation of the title will be the adornment of the substitutes. Al-Abdal, or the substitute, that's a spiritual rank. But the book is about 4, as I said, 4 pillars of spiritual transformation: silence, hunger, isolation, and night vigil, or you could say seclusion and night vigil. These silence, hunger, seclusion, and vigilance, these 4 aspects are included in any spiritual path. They're included in different forms, but these 4 pillars, they're always present in any spiritual path in terms of spiritual transformation, spiritual growth and development, and going through the path of spirituality, going through the path to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Any path to Allah would include a combination of different forms of these 4 aspects: silence, hunger, isolation or seclusion, and vigilance. Right? So inshallah, during the month of Ramadan, we have this course. So we have basically a lecture on each. In Malaysia, I did an event or a talk on the four. I was in Malaysia for most of February. So I did a talk with a Mawlid on the four pillars of spiritual transformation. But this time around, I'll be doing this course with Muslims Connected. Each lecture is on one of them. So it's a more expanded explanation of them. So we have a whole lecture on silence, a whole lecture on hunger, a whole lecture on isolation, seclusion, a whole lecture on vigilance. So inshallah, this is coming up bi'idhnillah ta'ala with Muslims Connected during the month of Ramadan. It's going to be every Sunday around noontime. It will be announced to you, inshallah ta'ala, the time of it, bi'idhnillah. I think it's, if I recall correctly, it's the same time of the webinar that started today, or that we were doing today, inshallah. Let me see if there are any other questions. Jazakumullah ta'ala khair. A brother or a sister said, Shaykh, you may advise Sister Anisa to approach a Muslim psychologist for trauma counseling. To harbor traumatic experiences for over 11 years is unhealthy. Barakallah ta'ala fikum. I felt that she, because it's included in her question, in her statement, she said, after treatment, I have recovered to a certain level. So I assume that she already received, a sort of a counseling help or therapy of some sort. But I agree with you, of course. If that is still lingering, then Jazakumullah ta'ala khair for this reminder. Barakallah ta'ala fikum, of course. Wa alaykum assalam. Can you mention عفوا Sister Nur Azza, barakallah ta'ala fikum. Sister Ilham, can you mention the name of the book and the author again? Barakallah ta'ala fikum. Yes, the author of the book is Shaykh al-Akbar, Sayyidi Muhyiddin ibn al-Arabi, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. The book is called Hilyatul Abdal. This is in Arabic. In English, the adornment of the substitutes. And it was translated under the title, The Four Pillars of Spiritual Transformation. No. So I use it as a source. We're not going to be reading the book, but I use it as a source. And Imam al-Ghazali spoke about them as well, not in the same way that Sayyidi Muhyiddin al-Arabi did, but I use the book of Sayyidi Muhyiddin as a starting point for discussion. No. Sister Nisha Abdul, I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. She says, could you kindly give some advice regarding persons have thyroid, diabetes, depression, medication? They usually try to fast but gets brain fog and unable to cope until you are fasting. What should they do other than paying the fidya? Okay, so if this has been, you're welcome, Sister Ilham. Also some of the comments that came in the chat. Jazakumullah ta'ala khair, barakallah ta'ala fikum, alhamdulillah, akramakumullah, Sister Anisa and Sister Faiza and Sister Ilham, akramakumullah, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen. This is the benefit of your sincere intentions, alhamdulillah, and everyone here. Okay, so Sister Nisha, if this is, I mean, if this the diagnosis and prescription done by a by the physician says that that fasting would be wouldn't be possible, and a physician who has an understanding of the rules of fasting, of siyam, and so on and so forth, and then they would say that fasting would contradict with the physical problems, then yes, as you mentioned, the fidya. But then your question is about what else with the fidya. Again, it depends on it depends on what the person is able to do. So, for example, if they are, if they have, in terms of time, and in terms of if they are physically in shape, and they're able to, do, for example, extra recitation of the Quran, then they can do that. If they can do extra rak'ahs of Salat al-Duha, for example. Some of the pious predecessors, they used to, when they miss Qiyam al-Layl, they would make it up in Duha. So instead of just praying 2 rak'ahs, they can pray 6 or 8 rak'ahs in Duha. So there are ways to increase in ibadah, but again, one has to be mindful not to overburden themselves, not so that they won't burn out during the month of Ramadan. So it really depends on what is possible for them, what they can cope with, what they can handle, whether in terms of physical ibadah, as salah or as recitation of the Quran, or in terms of charity. Can they give out more than the fidya? Then maybe this is something that they can do. What is accessible, but yet, unfortunately, we sometimes become lazy with, is to do dhikr. Have a tasbih on hand and do dhikr. Right? Have a daily dhikr of istighfar, a daily wird of istighfar, a daily wird of la ilaha illallah. A daily word of istighfar, a daily word of salah upon the Prophet ﷺ, and a daily word of la ilaha illallah. This can help as well. But at the end of the day, they're not obliged. See, they want to, seize the opportunity of Ramadan to increase in ibadah. Again, it would vary in terms of what they're able to do, in terms of physically or financially or psychologically, right? I find the dhikr through the tasbih something that is very accessible to people of different backgrounds and so on and so forth, right? So this is very accessible. Now, if they can physically, do extra without feeling without getting a sense of burnout during Ramadan, then this is something that they can do in terms of extra rak'ahs in duha, for example, right? But look, again, I'm saying in general sense because I don't know the specific case. But what I would also recommend, because of what I'm trying to read through the question, if there's a depression and so on and so forth, look, sometimes during Ramadan, some charities and NGOs and so on and so forth, they do caravans, charity caravans. They need people to help in boxing the food that they give out. So maybe they can volunteer if they are physically up to it. And also it's good, because when somebody is suffering from depression, it's good that they go out, they socialize, that they work on projects and so on and so forth. So this is something that I would recommend. Maybe the rak'ahs of duha is not ideal for their case. Maybe the extra chapters of the Quran or pages of the Quran is not ideal. But what could be ideal for them is that they go out and do some, volunteering work, for example, if they're physically up to it. They can do something like that. Help with charity, for example. This is something that will be trying as much as possible to pray the congregation in the mosque, right? To pray the daily prayers in the masjid, so that they have their daily wird of Quran recited in the masjid instead of doing it at home. وهكذا. So this different mixture would really depend on the person, and people have different cases, but this is a general answer and they can pick and choose what is suitable for them, inshallah. جزاكم الله تعالى خير. بارك الله تعالى فيكم. الحمد لله. أكرمكم الله. طيب. So alhamdulillah, جزاكم الله تعالى خيرا for your time. I hope inshallah ta'ala that the advice that I shared with you today would be beneficial for all of us. It would be beneficial for me before beneficial for you. But I'll ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that will be beneficial for all of us in this world and the hereafter. Allahumma ameen. And ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us sincerity and acceptance. Jazakumullah ta'ala khairan for your attendance, inshallah. I'll be seeing you guys bi'idhnillah ta'ala during the month of Ramadan with the course that we're having with Muslims Connected on the 4 pillars of spiritual transformation, inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullah ta'ala khairan for your time. Barakallah ta'ala feekum. See you soon, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.